Watch Atlanta Now News at 8 for live results coverage.
Now, the most important stories from across the country and here at home. Atlanta, your news starts now.
Right now at 8, bomb threats in Georgia have forced evacuations at nearly a dozen area polling places and locations. Investigators say they were hoaxes. Find out who officials say is responsible. Plus, a total of 1.2 million Georgians have cast ballots today. We talked to Metro voters about the election as updated results come in on some of the top races in the region. Vice President Kamala Harris is holding her election watch party at a place she knows well. Here looking live at Howard University in Washington, D.C. The school is Harris's alma mater. And we want to give you a look live at West Palm Beach. Former President Donald Trump is holding his watch party at the Palm Beach County Convention Center, not far from his Mar-a-Lago home. Good evening. I'm Jessi Mitchel. On November 15th, 2022, Trump announced his third presidential run. On July 21st of this year, President Biden dropped out of the race and endorsed Vice President Harris. Now we could be hours away from learning who will be our next commander-in-chief. Georgia is a key battleground state, and its 16 electoral votes could put one candidate over the top. Polls in the state closed an hour ago. Take a look at the latest numbers. With 32% of the vote in, Trump has 54.8% of the vote. Kamala Harris has 44.6%. If you missed those numbers, don't worry. For the next hour, you'll see the latest results on the presidential and local races scrolling across the bottom of your screen. We have team coverage tonight. We begin with Christian Benavidez, live outside a polling place in Atlanta. Christian, what have voters been telling you tonight?
Jessi, so far voters have been telling me that they are motivated, certainly, to go out and vote. And the numbers reflect that. Early voting numbers showed 4 million people here in Georgia already cast their ballots, and officials believe about 1 million cast their ballot today.
Polling sites across the country are seeing strong turnout as voters decide the next president. Voters say they came to weigh in on the issues. CBS News exit polling shows the economy is the #1 issue for supporters of former President Donald Trump, followed by immigration.
The southern border is definitely a big issue for me.
While supporters of Vice President Kamala Harris say they are most concerned about the state of democracy, followed by abortion.
For me, it's going to be women's rights.
Voter enthusiasm has been high.
I love the energy.
So you think both sides are energized?
To a certain extent, yeah, I think so. I think you're seeing more passion.
What do you think is motivating those who are voting for Kamala Harris?
Hope, honestly. Hope everybody, sees that America is ready to turn this new page in our history.
Harris spent the day calling into radio shows before stopping by a phone bank at DNC headquarters.
We have all these volunteers here. You'd be really excited to know there's just a lot of young people who are here calling the neighbors all over the country.
Casting his ballot in Palm Beach, Florida, Trump sowed doubt about the process.
I'm hearing in Pennsylvania they won't have an answer till 2 or 3 days from now. I think it's an absolute outrage if that's the case.
Both candidates will be watching closely with one of the most contentious and unpredictable campaigns in history now in the hands of the people.
State officials here had hoped that they would have about 70% of the vote counted by this time, by 8 o'clock tonight. But at this point, they've got just about 30% of the vote counted. Part of the reason why this is taking longer than originally forecasted is because you've got bomb threats that took place at polling sites in Fulton County and in DeKalb County. Officials believe that may be from foreign interference, and that's what the FBI is looking into. We should also note that the two counties, Fulton County, DeKalb County, that haven't reported votes yet, they went for President Joe Biden by over 70% back in 2020.
Christian, thank you so much. And a short time ago, Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger gave an update and said 1.2 million Georgians voted today. Christian will continue keeping tabs on tonight's races. We'll check back in with him in our next half hour. But first, let's check back in on the latest results in some of the key Georgia races. Democratic Congresswoman Nikema Williams represents District 5, which includes most of Atlanta. Republican John Salveson is her opponent with 27% of the vote vote in. Nikema Williams has 89% of that vote, and in District 6, which was redrawn and now has Atlanta's northern suburbs, including all of Forsyth County, Democratic Congresswoman Lucy McBath faces a challenge from Republican Jeff Criswell. With 44% of that vote in, Lucy McBath has 76%. And GOP Congressman Rich McCormick and Democrat Bob Christian are battling for the 7th District, which covers most of Gwinnett County. With 55% of that vote, Rich McCormick takes it 62%. And in State Senate is challenging incumbent Republican Sean Still. With 58% of that vote, Still has it 52%. We'll continue looking at other local races throughout this newscast. We want to give you more information on what Christian Benavidez reported earlier. The Secretary of State says bomb threats against Georgia polling places originated from Russia. Brad Raffensperger said the threats were not viable. According to the Secretary of State, the hoaxes caused the temporary closing of 6 DeKalb, 5 Fulton, and 1 Gwinnett polling places, and DeKalb County Police conducted bomb sweeps at 2 other locations. The voting hours were extended at all of the affected precincts. Several other states were targeted as well. An Atlanta Now News consultant says law enforcement received training on how to determine what is considered a credible threat. Hours at Cobb County and Glenn County precincts were extended because of equipment problems. Georgia is a crucial battleground state, and all eyes are on Fulton County. Georgia's largest county has faced struggles in the past, but this year officials say things are different. This is a look at its new election hub, a 600,000-foot warehouse. This morning, the county opened 177 polling locations and dispatched 1,800 poll workers to precincts to make sure things ran smoothly. Each precinct also had a police officer on site for security purposes. We want to check in now with our political analyst who will offer insight throughout the night. John Acevedo is the Associate Dean of Academic Programs and Students at Emory Law. John, thank you for joining us. We're starting to see some of the local and national results coming in. All eyes were on Fulton County's massive ballot count operation back in November 2020. I was at Mercedes-Benz Stadium as the county conducted its count of all of those ballots. How will the election office's new facility ensure there's no confusion or concern?
It really should help make the ballots much more secure and be a facility designed for ballot counting rather than kind of more of an ad hoc sort of nature. So it should make the process smoother, though it's the first time the facility is being used in a presidential election, so there's always the possibility for kind of growing pains as you get used to new surroundings.
And today we heard about those bogus bomb threats in Fulton County, which resulted in voting hours having to be extended. What do you make of the efforts to undermine the Georgia election this time around?
It's quite shocking to see that happen in a U.S. election. It'll be interesting to see if there are foreign operatives responsible or if it was someone domestic. But it's the first time I've ever seen that in an election that I've watched.
Well, it just shows how important it is. John, thank you. We will check back in with you in a little bit. Despite those efforts to undermine the election, hundreds of thousands of Georgians made a final push to cast their ballots. Atlanta Now News reporter Valencia Jones spoke to Fulton County voters in Buckhead before the polls closed.
Voting matters. We gotta make a change.
Voters across the battleground state of Georgia and here in Fulton County turned out in record numbers for early voting and on Election Day, many supporting former President Donald Trump as the next president.
Trump has specified that if he becomes president, he will, buy and hold Bitcoin in the U.S. Treasury. This is the next thing that's going to be necessary if you want our dollar to hold its value going forward.
He is definitely the best candidate for the economy. My wife is an immigrant. I believe in immigration, but the vast numbers of illegal immigrants is a major concern.
I'm the son of immigrants, and it's important for us to be the voice of the voiceless. Kamala Harris has the knowledge, she has the experience to run this country.
First-time voter Naomi Seals says voting and abortion rights inspired her to cast her first vote for Kamala Harris.
Kamala, I feel like, would be the best fit. In my personal opinion, all politicians kind of have their own agenda. but she seems to be the only person available who's fitting my interests.
Voters I spoke with had different views on who they thought should be the next president, but most agreed they'd like to see less division and more unity as the country moves forward.
Everything that we've been through in the last few years is very telling, and so we all need to come out and show our support of the United States.
Election officials say more than 4 million Georgians voted early, and over 800,000 voters had cast their ballots on Election Day by 5 p.m., putting the state on track to reach more than 5 million votes for 2024.
I'm just really grateful for the team that we have. I've led the way to make Georgia the most secure, free, and fair place to vote in the United States.
Voters say they're hoping for a more secure and fair place to live, regardless of the election outcome.
Over the next few days, we need to support each other and just be as unified as we can.
Valencia Jones, Atlanta Now News.
Let's take a look at some more of the important local races. Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis was fighting to keep her seat against Republican challenger Courtney Kramer, a former Trump White House staffer, and she did it. With 99% of the vote in, Willis received 63%. Kramer received 37%. In Clayton County, Democrat Tasha Allen is facing Republican David Hamrick for an open seat in District Baker. Sheriff Taylor was first elected in 2020. He believes strengthening mental health resources is a top priority. Mike Baker wants to build stronger relationships with the DA's office and other county law enforcement agencies. Cobb County is also voting on a sheriff. The incumbent is Democrat Craig D. Owens Sr. He lists body cameras for all deputies and more aggressive community outreach among his achievements. Republican David Cavender says he'll ensure the sheriff's office operates with integrity, accountability, and transparency. Next at 8, the Georgia advanced vote was historic. Later in this newscast, we find out what motivated so many people to cast their ballots early. And Vice President Harris and former President Trump are trying to win the White House. You're looking live at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Our live team coverage on the election continues after this break. We're tracking not just the election, but also our next chance for showers. And there's some activity in the tropics. Meteorologist Andrew Kozak joins us with your full forecast. Andrew.
Going to start off with a couple of headlines for you across the Atlanta area and much of Georgia. It's dry through tonight as we put a cap on day 37 without any measurable rain. But hold on, we're not going to make it much past that because showers and storms will return to the forecast. There's also potential tropical moisture from Rafael. We'll talk about that in the Caribbean. And then the mild pattern that we are in now will remain intact. Say goodbye to the 80s and 90s and hello to 70s and even 60s in the forecast for Hot City. 65 degrees in northwest Georgia, in the mountains around 59. And there could be a shower or two, especially the further north you go over toward Tennessee. 64 to 62 in Peachtree City, 64 in Athens, Augusta coming in at 65 for a low in Macon as well, 63 in Griffin and 61 in Carrollton. Tomorrow we don't make it nearly as warm as we have the last few days. We'll have temperatures in the 70s. You can kind of see that slice of yellow here, the cooler color coding, showing that we have a front that will be moving through. That'll spark off some showers and even a few rumbles of thunder. The rain chances, they're going to increase the next few days all the way through, not just the end of the week, but then they start to increase significantly by the end of the weekend. This could be some leftover moisture from Rafael. Now, we're not going to take any direct hit, of course, being inland, but if this tropical storm that is expected to become a hurricane near Cuba and eventually move into the Gulf does get a little bit closer to us, it could move up and inland. And this may hit areas like New Orleans or across areas across the Gulf. And as that moves north and east, it could spread some rain in our direction, especially as we head into the late part of the weekend. So we're going to keep an eye on that. In the meantime, a few scattered showers that don't have anything to do with Rafael will begin to move in as we head into your Wednesday. And that, again, should put a cap on all of these days that we've had over a month without any measurable rain. Here's Wednesday afternoon, showers and even a few thunderstorms, especially south. We get into Wednesday night, and there could be some really heavy rain for areas southeast of Atlanta over toward Georgia and South Carolina. We get into Thursday, and as that front sags south, we're talking about a few more showers in the forecast. Although tonight is probably going to be the last dry night that we have for a while. Patchy fog late and down to 64. Tomorrow, 73 degrees. We'll have some morning fog, and then by the afternoon, a shower or storm. But the general rule will be the further south you go, the better chance for some measurable rain. 74 on Thursday, 75 on Friday. The weekend will bring us that chance for rain, maybe even some significant rain by Sunday. Looks like we'll start to cool off, and also we'll start to dry out by early next week.
Thanks, Andrew. Let's take another look at some local races we're following. In District 12, Democrat Elizabeth Johnson is trying to take Republican Rick Allen's seat. The district is made up of portions of the eastern and southeastern parts of Georgia, including Augusta. With 45% of the vote in, Allen has 58% compared to 42% for Johnson. Georgia Congressional District 1 includes much of the southeastern part of the state. Incumbent Republican Congressman Buddy Carter was facing Democrat Patty Hewitt. He won with 99% of that vote in. He received 56% compared to 44% for Hewitt. In District 2, it's incumbent Congressman percent of the vote in. Johnson has 53% compared to 47% for Bishop. Coming up at 8, the Hawks dropped the ball in 4 of their last 5 games. Coach Schneider explains what was missing in last night's loss to the defending champs. But first, let's give you a live look downtown, looking west. These pictures courtesy of EarthCam. Keep tracking the up-to-the-minute results at the bottom of your screen. We'll be right back.
You're watching The Block on Atlanta's 69.
Tonight in sports, it's do or die for Atlanta United. We're previewing this weekend's match.
Time for Atlanta Now Sports.
Good evening, I'm Randy Waters. Atlanta United is preparing for the match that will either extend or end their MLS season. Saturday at Miami will be the deciding match, which is also Saturday night. Atlanta dropped game 1 on the road, won game 2 here by a 2-1 margin, and now is back in Lionel Messi's backyard for this one.
We cannot make the same mistakes. We all know that playing at home is a huge advantage, but also we know if we fight together, doesn't matter where and what time, we can win the game. When you play, like, how many games we play against Miami, like 3, 4 in this season, and yeah, you learn more, you know, and you have more experience, so like you know what you will do, you have to do.
Georgia Tech can clinch bowl eligibility on Saturday. That's the good news. The potential bad news, the opponent is Miami for this noon kick affair. Hurricanes 9-0, and quarterback Cam Ward is in the Heisman conversation. He leads the nation with 29 touchdown passes. Speaking of passing, Tech quarterback Haynes King is a game-time decision.
They've been some close games, and they found a way to win, and that's the mark of a good football team, right? Because it's not like they've won half of them. They won them all. So they like, just telling you statistically, I mean, they've scored more points in the fourth quarter than they have any other quarter. So it's a 4-quarter football team. We got to play 4 quarters.
Georgia will take on an Ole Miss offense. It's lost its best running back to injury. His replacement is Dominique Thomas, who was on Georgia State's spring roster before heading to Oxford. Before that was at Clemson, and before that was at Union College in Kentucky. Hey, that's college sports in 2024. Georgia's defense will be dealing with quarterback Jackson Dart through 6 touchdown passes, had 515 yards, and a 63-31 win over Arkansas last week. Dart is tops in NCAA Division I, 3,210 passing yards, 21 touchdown passes for him, and on top of those scary numbers, runs with authority.
You have to approach it that way. I mean, he's 225 pounds, and he lowers his shoulders, and he's physical. He doesn't give himself up very often. So, we don't coach it any different than tackling a back. You know, he might drop his shoulder. He might choose to slide. You have to react to what he does, but you have to be physical now. You can't approach this guy like he's going to give himself up, because he'll run right through you.
The Celtics ran right through the Hawks last night. Atlanta's Jalen Johnson led the home team with 20 points, and his 11 rebounds also led Atlanta. No answer to the Jason Tatum highlight show. 28 points, 9 assists, 2 steals. In other words, the Celtic machine was functioning at championship level. They're 7-1. Hawks fall to 3-5.
We didn't have the level of force that you have to have against this team, which ended up in some
some tough shots, some bad shots. And I think our guys would all acknowledge that. Your offense impacts your defense, whether it's a turnover or a tough shot when they can run against you. And there's no one thing tonight. It was obviously a tough night.
That's a look at sports. Jessi, back to you.
Thanks, Randy. Let's take a look at some more local races. District 3 is based in West Central Georgia. Republican Brian Jack and Democrat Mara Keller are competing for the open seat. With 52% of that vote in, Brian Jack has 67% of the vote. District 4 includes all of Rockdale County. Democratic Congressman Hank Johnson is facing Republican Eugene Yu with 0% of the vote in. We'll see how that turns out. Incumbent Republican Andrew Clyde faces a challenge from Democrat Tambri Cash in the 9th Congressional District. The rural district includes Hall County. With 44% of that vote, Clyde has it 80%. Congressional District 8 includes Central and South Central Georgia. Republican Congressman Austin Scott facing Democrat Darius Butler with 43% of that vote. Scott has 70% of the vote. Coming up, our live team presidency and control of Congress is up for grabs. Democrats have the majority in the Senate, while Republicans have the majority in the House. But that could change tonight. The GOP seat has already flipped. We'll be right back after this break.
You just waltz in and make yourself at home whenever I'm out?
That's not true. Sometimes you're upstairs asleep.
Tonight at 11 on Atlanta's 69. Now, the most important stories from across the country and here at home. Atlanta, your news starts now.
Good evening. I'm Jessi Mitchel. Both presidential candidates and their campaigns have kept Georgia on their mind in the final weeks leading up to Election Day. Christian Benavides joins us live tonight outside a polling location in Atlanta. Christian, based on what you're hearing from voters, how have the candidates' different messages resonated with them?
Jessi, well, look, it all depends on who they're looking to. Those who are voting for Kamala Harris, they say that the state of democracy is what's most important to them. But overall, we know that there's been a lot of enthusiasm, particularly here in Georgia, where early voting numbers have broken records. You've got over 4 million people who voted early, and officials believe that more than 1 million likely voted today.
Christian, you've been watching those long lines in Metro Atlanta during the record-breaking early voting numbers. What did you hear from those voters about the importance of their efforts to cast a ballot early?
Well, they wanted to make sure that they got out and cast their ballots. I think what's most interesting is that during the early voting part of this, you would see sort of lines and people that are waiting. But throughout the day, what we've seen is just a steady stream of people that have been going in and going out. We never saw a line that formed outside of the polling precinct. That may indicate that most people here chose to vote early. Certainly the numbers show that. So at this point, those folks that we spoke to are just sitting at home waiting to see what the results of the election may be. I think something important to note here in Georgia is that state officials were hoping to have about 70% of the results out certainly by now, but there was a little snag in that. All of that related to some bomb threats at different polling sites here in Fulton County and in DeKalb County nearby. All of that is delaying some of the results that we've been expecting to see. However, state officials do believe that they believe that they're going to get the results out as soon as possible, or at least they want to get them out, hopefully by the end of tonight. That's what officials were saying.
We've heard all the preparations they've been making, and with so many of those voters casting ballots before Election Day, plus everything that's happening today, how smooth ballots to go this time around?
Well, the Secretary of State, the Georgia Secretary of State's office said that they are working to make sure that all the votes are counted as soon as possible, hopefully as early as tonight. Again, the big thing has been these threats at different polling sites, the FBI and federal officials saying that they believe that these threats came from foreign actors for some sort of foreign interference. And all of the polling sites that were targeted, which were in Fulton County and DeKalb County by these bomb threats that turned out to be false, were all in heavily Democratic-leaning counties. So we'll have to just see how the night goes on. Again, you've got 4 million people that voted early, about 1 million according to officials that voted today. That's a record-breaking number of people.
Christian Benavides, thank you. We'll keep an eye on it. Looking at more of our local races, the numbers from the AP Congressional District 10 have been redrawn and now includes an area between Atlanta and Augusta. GOP incumbent Mike Collins is running against Democrat Lexi Doherty. With 46% of that vote in, Collins has 74% of the vote. The District 11 race is between incumbent GOP Congressman Barry Loudermilk and Democrat Katie Stamper. The district covers the northwestern part of the metro, including Bartow County. With 71% of that vote, Loudermilk has 67% of the vote. Democrat David Scott is trying to keep his seat against Republican Jonathan Chavez in the 13th district, which is the southern and western parts of the region, including Jonesboro. With 29% of that vote, Scott has 78%. And Republican Marjorie Taylor Greene represents District 14. Democrat Sean Harris is challenging her. That district is in northwest Georgia. With 69% of the vote, Greene holds it 66%. Georgia state election leaders estimated that early votes and absentee ballots would make up about 70% of the overall vote. Atlanta Now News reporter Valencia Jones reveals what drove Georgians to advanced voting.
This is my first time voting, so I'm 19.
Noah Shafferts, a first-time voter, was among the more than 4 million Georgians election officials said cast their ballots during early voting.
I've just been told that, like, you don't want to go out during normal voting because then you're going to be waiting there for hours.
Inflation, immigration, abortion, and other hot topics also pushed concerned voters to the polls early. For Frederick Spruill, it was about getting homeless people off the street.
If I'm going to complain or whatever, how about just be the solution?
Monday, Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger said 92 Georgia counties had exceeded a 50% voter turnout by the end of early voting, an unprecedented number in Georgia history.
The big change compared to 2020 was the Republican increased acceptance of early voting and encouraging their supporters to get out and vote early.
Emory University Associate Professor of Political Science Zachary Peskowitz said Georgia was more of a top-tier battleground state in 2024 than it was around state in 2024 than it was in 2020, driving more early voting despite, or as some would argue, because of state election law changes. He also said advocates and campaigns went into overdrive to get out the vote.
Harris really needed to increase her support amongst black voters. So Georgia, of the 7 battleground states, has the highest share of black voters in the electorate. Trump really needed to turn out his supporters and, make sure those lower propensity voters who might not habitually vote in every election made it out to the polls.
Both campaigns had high hopes those final numbers would lead to a big win. And in the weeks before this historic election, early voters reflected on the fate of the country.
What's most important is America survives as a free country, that we all have the opportunity to do something with our lives.
Valencia Jones, Atlanta Now News.
Back to the state races. State House District 42 encompasses Smyrna. Republican Diane Jackson and Democrat Gabriel Sanchez are facing off to replace the incumbent representative. With 70% of that vote, Sanchez has 64%. District 53 represents Roswell. Incumbent Republican Deborah Silcox is running for her seat against Democrat Susie Greenberg. With 74% of the vote, Silcox has 52%. And with House District 56 covering a stretch of West Atlanta, 82% of the votes are in. Bryce Berry has 85% of the votes. And we have another check-in with our political analyst. John Acevedo is the Associate Dean of Academic Programs and Students at Emory Law. John, thanks for joining us again. As we watch these results roll in, I'm reminded of 4 years ago. In the 2020 election, we ended up seeing a runoff in both of Georgia's U.S. Senate races that ultimately resulted in victory for both Democrats. John, we have several congressional seats up for grabs. What are some of the Georgia races in the cycle that could have a national impact?
Here, as we look at it, really the races in the suburbs near Atlanta and Savannah potentially could impact the House seats. If one of those were to flip, 2 of those were to flip, that's really what's needed. It's such a tight race across the board for the House of Representatives, so we'll have to wait and see.
We're watching the pace at which these results are coming in. How do you think the early voter turnout will impact the results and the ballot counting process this time?
I think it'll speed things along with so many individuals, myself included, voting early. That should give the election workers more time. Everything's already there to them to count. I think the process, at least when I voted, was extraordinarily smooth. Everything was scanned and in place. So I'm optimistic that the state will meet its objective of getting most of the votes out tonight.
Great. Well, back in 2020, we waited several days for the official call on the Electoral College votes. What kinds of challenges, besides those fake bomb threats, if any, do you expect to come out of this cycle?
There's always some challenges. There's always mismarked ballots that get challenged by observers. I would imagine more of those standard issues, but nothing short of more bomb threats. Short of that, I think there should be a fairly smooth process without too many surprises.
Thank you so much, John. And we will check back in with you in a little bit to see what we have left remaining for the rest of the night. And during the campaign, Vice President Harris and former President Trump made countless visits to the Peach State. We now have new numbers on the race. With 52% of the vote in, Donald Trump has 55% to Kamala Harris's 44%. Ahead of Election Day, polls showed the presidential race couldn't be a national race, and reports on what's at stake.
Americans heading to the polls to decide who will win the White House and shape the country's political landscape for the next 4 years.
I feel like this is one of the most detrimental moments we'll have in the country.
I'm excited to give women a chance to be represented.
The latest CNN poll showing Vice President and Democratic presidential nominee Kamala Harris having only a slight lead over former President Donald Trump among likely voters. But with the margin of error, there was no clear leader heading into Election Day. The winner will need 270 of the 538 electoral votes to clinch the presidency. The race likely boiling down to these 7 battleground states, where polling has found the two candidates are nearly tied. Among the most pivotal, Pennsylvania, where 19 electoral votes are up for grabs. Both candidates making their final campaign pitches in the Keystone State Monday.
It is time for a new generation of leadership in America.
Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago?
More than 78 million Americans cast their votes before Election Day, with millions more voting Tuesday.
People who don't get out and vote don't have anything to say.
No matter the outcome, history will be made, either with the first convicted felon becoming president, or if for the first time in 235 years, America elects a woman to the presidency. I'm Jen Sullivan reporting.
President Joe Biden will be watching the race closely from the White House. He did not have any public events scheduled for today. You may be wondering how long you're going to have to wait for the results in the presidential election today. Well, here's a look at how things went down in the past elections. In 2020, an increase in mail-in ballots due to the pandemic actually slowed down the process. The race wasn't called for President Biden until 4 days after the election. In 2016, the race was called for former President Trump in the early hours of the next morning, shortly before 3 a.m. In 2012, former President Obama was projected to win a second term over Mitt Romney before midnight on Election Day. Obama also secured a quick victory in 2008 against John McCain. That race was called around 11 p.m. on election night. In 2004, John Kerry conceded to then President George W. Bush in a phone call at 11 a.m. the morning after. And who could forget the election of 2000? George W. Bush officially secured his first term on December 12th, a full 5 weeks after Election Day. Experts are cautiously optimistic we won't have to wait that long, or as long as we did in 2020. Voting by mail numbers have decreased, and states are implementing more efficient measures in the early voting process. It's unclear when we'll learn who won this year's presidential election. Trump is holding his election watch party at the Palm Beach County Convention Center in West Palm Beach. He's already won the Sunshine State. And Vice President Harris is having her watch party at her alma mater, Howard University. Her team says it's confident about the race. Our team coverage continues after this break.
Atlanta 69 celebrates Native American Heritage Month.
Metro Atlanta has not seen measurable rain in more than 30 days. But meteorologist Andrew Kozak says showers are on the way. He joins us now with your complete forecast. Andrew.
A few headlines to start things off on this election night. We will remain dry through tonight, which is great because we have some rain coming our way. So hopefully you'll soak it all up, because by the time we get into tomorrow, showers and a few thunderstorms return to the area. Believe it or not, today is the cap on day 37 without any measurable rain in Atlanta. That is going to change. Not only that, but we actually have the chance for some potential tropical moisture from Rafael. We'll track that tropical storm. Not going to be looking at a direct hit for anything, but certainly some residual rain after it hits the Gulf is likely by the weekend. Mild pattern, that will return. We're not likely to see any real hot temperatures the next few days. In fact, these overnight lows tonight could be closer to what our high temperatures will be in just a few short days. 64 degrees, mostly cloudy in Atlanta, 65 in northwest Georgia. For the mountains, temperatures in the upper 50s to near 60 and a better chance for a shower or two. 64 in Athens, 61 in Carrollton, 64 LaGrange, Macon around 65 along with Augusta. Augusta may be one of the only spots in the 80s tomorrow. Everybody else will have a chance for showers, maybe even a rumble of thunder, non-severe, but temperatures only in the low 70s. So we go from the mid 60s to the low 70s for highs. Not much of a change. That's going to be due to that cloudy cover. One thing we are going to see finally is some decent amounts of rain coming our way. For Wednesday, a good chance, although Thursday, Friday may be a little on the drier side with just a scattered shower. By the weekend, we have a better chance for some more significant rain. Again, some residual leftover moisture from Rafael could be coming into the picture Saturday into Sunday. It came by the time we get into, we'll say tomorrow morning. This will be hitting Cuba, and then by the time we get into the late part of the week, chances are it's likely to stay across the Gulf of Mexico and then come ashore anywhere from, we'll say, Houston or Galveston all the way over to the Florida Panhandle. Yes, New Orleans in that as well, but it will be a weak tropical storm. There could be potential heavy rain, and then as it moves north and east, it will give us a chance for some rain, especially again by Saturday into Sunday. Before we get there, we have a front that will be moving in, giving us that chance for some showers and a few rumbles of thunder. That's going to be for your Wednesday. Heaviest rain will certainly be to our south. So for tonight, down to 64, some patchy fog late. Keep that in mind if you're out late or even early in the morning. For some morning fog tomorrow, a PM shower or rumble of thunder. 7-day plan shows the cooler temperatures, not even out of the 60s for Sunday. Showers and a couple of storms, and then we get into early next week and we start to dry out by Tuesday.
Thanks, Andrew. We want to check in one more time with our political analyst. John Acevedo is the Associate Dean of Academic Programs and Students at Emory Law. In the last election, John, Georgia was one of the hardest states to call, with a very close count between President Biden and former President Trump. What has surprised you so far?
So far, that the Republican turnout seems to have been, early voting turnout, quite strong. And the race isn't quite as narrow as I thought it would be at this point, but there's still a lot of votes.
Where do you think the vote count will end tonight? What can we expect tomorrow?
I'm hopeful that the vote count will be wrapped up by morning, maybe even tonight, probably midnight or very early morning hours of tomorrow. We'll have to wait and see, but it looks like things are moving quite quickly, and there's no more interference with bomb threats or other types of incidents.
Thankfully, that is good news. But what do you make of that greater focus on Georgia with these outside influences from what state officials are saying is Russia?
It really looks like, again, an intentional attempt to disrupt the U.S. election by foreign operatives. And I think it shows how pivotal the swing state Georgia has become and probably will remain for the next several presidential elections.
Thank you again for your insight. We do have some other news to get to tonight. We want to warn you, the video you're about to see could be disturbing for some.
Remember I told you I'm either going to kill a cop or not leave.
The Jacksonville Sheriff's Office arrested 4 people related to 2 incidents. In one encounter, officers were alerted to a man after he allegedly made threats to a stadium employee and claimed she was attempting to kidnap his children. In a second incident, several men got into an altercation with officers after being asked to leave the game. Officers can be seen on camera punching the men multiple times. All 4 men were charged with battery on law enforcement on Sunday. 35 people in total were ejected from the game. The billionaire co-founder of Atlanta-based Home Depot has died. Bernard Marcus was 95. Marcus and Atlanta Falcons owner Arthur Blank founded what became the world's largest chain of hardware stores. The pair grew the chain into a retail giant, boasting 2,300 stores and a stock market valuation of nearly $400 billion. Marcus made a huge impact in the metro. He planned and financed the Georgia Aquarium and supported many charitable causes in the region. Governor Brian Kemp was among those who paid tribute to Marcus. His cause of death has not been released. The strike at Boeing is over. Boeing machinists in the Pacific Northwest voted overnight to accept a new contract proposal ending their 7-week strike. The new deal includes a 38% pay bump over 4 years and higher company contributions to 401k plans, though it still does not restore the traditional pension. The union says the 33,000 workers it represents can return to work as soon as tomorrow. New changes to the social media site X. People you've blocked will now be able to see your public posts anyway. While you can still block accounts, that change, users will now know that you have blocked them. X says the change is aimed at protecting users who have been blocked. We'll wrap up our election coverage after this final break.
You're watching The Block on Atlanta 69.
Now to an election story out of this world. Today, U.S. astronauts Butch Wilmore, Suni Williams, and Don Pettit shared a photo of themselves on Instagram, showing off their patriotic colors and socks with special messages on them. The astronauts voted early for the presidential election from space. Moments ago, we learned Hank Johnson won re-election in Georgia's 4th congressional district. Let's take one last look at the Georgia presidential race. Right now, Donald Trump is up 52% with 63% of the vote in. We have a long way to go tonight. Thanks so much for watching this special edition of Atlanta Now News. I'm Jessi Mitchel. We'll have the election results tomorrow. One final look at the Trump election watch party at the Palm Beach County Convention Center in West Palm Beach. Trump has won the Sunshine Party at the Palm Beach County Convention Center in West Palm Beach. Trump has won the Sunshine State. And now we'll look at the Harris watch party at her alma mater, Howard University. We'll see what happens. Have a great night.
Give me a U.S. state with the letter Y in it.
Louisiana.
Family Feud.
Watch tonight at 10 on Atlanta 69.